Welcome back to 60 Minutes. I come from a seafaring family, and early in life it occurred to me that all great stories of the sea tend to end in disaster, usually involving reckless human error in which people take the sea for granted. Such is the story of HMS Bounty. The first Bounty was burnt to the waterline by Fletcher Christian after history's most famous mutiny. The second Bounty was a 20th century replica which sank last year after deliberately sailing into Hurricane Sandy, one of the worst storms ever recorded. An unbelievable decision on the part of her skipper and a loyal crew who this time didn't mutiny but faithfully followed him into certain destruction and death. For anyone with salt water in their veins, there is nothing quite as beautiful as a tall ship. And the pride of the fleet undoubtedly was HMS Bounty. Tragically, she sank last year during Hurricane Sandy.
We're afraid that Sandy is going to be drawn north.
This city is basically underwater.
Oh my God, it's washed everything away!
It's a devastating storm.
This is a serious and big storm. You need to take this very seriously.
A storm the like of which few ships have ever experienced. Sandy was the biggest ever recorded on America's Atlantic coast.
I check the fleet, storm's going down. Survivor is in the water with Dan.
The disaster sparked one of the largest rescue operations ever mounted by the US Coast Guard and left the standing of her skipper, Robin Walbridge, ruined and families shattered.
He knew what was wrong with that boat. So angry. We don't know what we're going to do. We've talked about suicide. You know, we don't have a life. Our life was her.
You have to feel sorry for the skipper. I mean, he lost his vessel, which is terrible. He lost his life, which is worse. And maybe even worse than that, he loses his reputation.
Yes.
Well, my great-great-grandfather came over from the Isle of Man, which is where the Christians are from, England.
It's tragically ironic, then, that Claudene Christian, who claimed to be a direct descendant of Fletcher Christian, also died in last year's Bounty disaster.
Dana, how much can we attribute your daughter's untimely end to her fascination with her Christian background?
Oh, a lot. A lot.
She knew about Fletcher Christian.
Oh, yeah, and she loved that ship.
She's a beautiful girl.
She was so...
Claudene Christian was Dina's only child. She'd been beauty queen, a cheerleader, a singer, and a businesswoman before she decided to follow her genetic destiny onto the high seas aboard the Bounty.
I can wonder how they'd treat me if my name was Bly.
Yes.
It wasn't Captain Bligh skippering this Bounty, but Robin Walbridge, who once made this fateful boast about his ship.
We chase hurricanes.
All right. What's it like when you're chasing a hurricane?
You try and get up as close to the eye of it as you can to also get a good ride out of the hurricane.
And this conviction was about to be tested in October last year as Hurricane Sandy raced across the Caribbean towards the east coast of America, mutating into the largest Atlantic storm ever recorded.
I told her, I says, honey, they're calling it the perfect storm and Frankenstorm and everything.
What was the last word you heard from her?
Oh, the text said, don't worry, the Bounty loves hurricanes, and not to worry. And told how much she loved us.
Despite having a largely inexperienced crew, Captain Walbridge thought the Bounty would be safer riding out the storm at sea than in port. The Bounty left New London, Connecticut on October 25. The theory was to head east, then tack south, using the winds of the hurricane to slingshot the Bounty down to its destination of Florida. But it's a game of cat and mouse.
The boat had been through hurricanes before, and we'd gotten away with it.
And I say that advisedly. We'd gotten away with it.
Doug Faunt was one of the Bounty's 16 crew. He says, despite the size of the storm, there was no thought of a second mutiny on the Bounty. You're loyal to the skipper. You were loyal to the skipper. Are you still loyal to him?
Yes.
Did he do the right thing?
The boat sank. QED, no. Did we do the right thing as best we knew at the time? Yes.
Will we ever understand what was going on in his mind?
No.
2 days into the voyage, the Bounty is 300 miles east of Virginia Beach when she changes tack, heading southwest on a collision course with Hurricane Sandy. Back in Vian, Oklahoma, Dina Christian begins to fear the worst for her daughter, Claudene.
You know, I said, I know her. She's scared. She's panicking. And she can't, all of a sudden she finds out how big this thing is. And then he turns south. And it was just right to the hurricane.
This is going to be a big storm. It's going to be a difficult storm. When they tell you to evacuate, you need to evacuate.
Houses that had stood here for many generations were swept away, and even a year later, some of them so badly damaged remain, but whether they'll ever be restored again is quite unlikely. Standing in the security of the shore and looking out at that piece of water, you can only try to imagine the horror of being aboard an old-fashioned three-masted sailing ship and heading into the eye of that terrible storm. What, we wonder, was the captain thinking? Was he reckless?
Yes, he was reckless.
Jan Miles is the skipper of the beautiful schooner, the Pride of Baltimore. He says there is absolutely no way he would have been out at sea during Hurricane Sandy, and is still mystified why Captain Walbridge took such flagrant risks.
He went for a beeline straight to the storm, and it was unnecessary.
In which case, it's one of the great mysteries of the sea, isn't it?
Yes.
What was the captain thinking?
Yes, that is and continues to be the question.
Well, what do you think the answer is?
Well, I have the same question. I don't have answers. I have the same question.
Sunday, 28th of October, the Bounty is 160 kilometres off the coast of Cape Hatteras, North Carolina. Hurricane Sandy is in full fury. The ship's sails are shredded, the engine room is badly flooded, and soon both generators will fail, plunging her into darkness. The ship is dying, and the crew know it.
We were all working too hard to be afraid. We were doing what we had to do.
Is it true that there's a moment when the skipper talks to the crew and says, I don't know how we got into this mess?
Yes. So, we prepared for abandoning.
But Hurricane Sandy beat them to it. Just before dawn, a massive wave knocks her over.
People were pushed underwater. I was pushed underwater a couple of times by the mizzen rigging and assumed I was going to drown and didn't.
What do you think happened to Claudene?
I suspect that something came down on her and hit her, and she got hit.
And the Coast Guard called and said, there's 2 missing, and she's one of them. And I yelled, she's missing. And my husband jumped up. Her dad started just yelling and holding his head and just coming here and back in there and just yelling. And then he came into the bedroom and got on his knees and looked under the bed. I said, what are you doing? He goes, I'm looking for the gun. And I said, she's just missing. She's just missing right now. He said, I can't live without her. I won't live without her.
Traffic.
That's 5.
Altitude.
Roger, and swimmers at 4.
If anyone from the Bounty were to survive, it would depend on the US Coast Guard. Dan Todd was the rescue swimmer, Neil Mulder on the winch.
Check the police, storm's going down. How are we doing our way?
I never actually saw the boat in the water because the weather was just so bad and the waves were just crashing over it and everything. So all I saw were life rafts.
And hold. Am I good? You're good. Roger, storm's going into the water.
The nerves, the butterflies are in your stomach. For us, I think it's more you're anxious to go out there and help. At the same time, you know, for seeing 30-foot waves for the first time and knowing that you're going to go down in there.
First survivors coming out of the raft. All right, take the load. Taking the load. We have the load.
Dan and Neil pulled 9 survivors out of the water.
Roger, copy. QPI.
Those young men who came to get you, they're heroes, aren't they?
They are. They had a choice. They didn't have to do that.
5, we're right over the raft. Back 10.
5 other Bounty crew members were rescued by another Coast Guard team. But the 2 they couldn't save were skipper Robin Walbridge, who was never found, and Claudene Christian.
All of a sudden the phone rang again, and it was a woman. And she said, could you describe your daughter? So I described her. And so then the doctor got on, and he says, she didn't make it. They took us to the morgue. And they took us in his room. And she was in a bag. And they unzipped it, just like in the movies.
The US Coast Guard will soon hand down the results of its investigation into this calamity. The Bounty's seaworthiness and the captain's decision-making the focus of the inquiry. Fateful decisions made by a captain who went down with his ship, another ship named Bounty, and another voyage that ended in disaster.
I think we have to understand that the Bounty is a unique story. Any of the other accidents that that are on record are explained very clearly through sudden appearance of weather, not egregious mismanagement.
Egregious mismanagement. Sounds like a terrible judgment. Does he deserve it?
In my opinion, he brought upon a very bad legacy to himself.
And this captain's legacy is, in your words, recklessness.
Yes. Sad to say, yes.
Exclusive 60 Minutes content.